It's been a couple months since we did one of these, but with my favorite clan finally out, let's dive right back in. So today we're doing a deck profile on Granblue, which if you haven't been around for long, as I just said, favorite clan. I'm a big fan of just recursion playstyles because it's like, okay, so I lose stuff and I can just get it back in any time. It's very convenient, especially in a game with like Vanguard. I especially love it in Vanguard because like all of your guarding mechanics, your soul blast mechanics, any heals you get off, all of that is feeding into your toolbox, and it makes the play a lot more dynamic, and I really enjoy it. It gives me more options of play each turn, so that's all really nice. So the boss unit is, of course, King of Demonic Seas, Basskirk, which each turn we can counterblast 1, soul blast 1 to call something from our drop zone, and then Basskirk gets power plus 5,000 for each grade of that thing. And then its own Cont ability is when you have 10 or more cards in your drop zone, which you're generally going to reach by turn 3 or 4, you're going to have plus 5,000 power and plus 1 crit. So this is obviously going to be applying a lot of pressure on your opponent each turn, just for existing while plussing you. Generally swinging for 27, 32 solo, depending on what you're reviving. And you can get it up bigger by putting boosters behind it. It's really great, really fantastic. Unlike OTT or Mega Colony or whatever, you don't rewrite a lot in Granblue, but you're not reliant on rewriting. And anytime you see another Basskirk, you're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna ride this and get another Protect gift and get myself more soul. So it's something that you do when capable of it, but it's not something that you're terribly worried about doing, and you're not screwed if you don't do it. Then we have Skull Dragon, which has quite a number of drawbacks, but it's one of the most powerful units in the game. So Skull Dragon is it cannot be called from your hand, so you can only bring it out by using revival effects. And at the end of its battle, it is retired when it's on rear guard, but on VNR, it gets power plus 2,000 for each card in your drop zone. So when you've reached your basic 10 or more in drop threshold, this is going to be swinging for 32 solo, and it only gets beefier and beefier from that point. It's very useful for either forcing your opponent to higher damage so that all of your things can be pressuring your opponent more, or it will be what you use to push your opponent for game. So like say you're at 4 crit, you revive this, you're either forcing your opponent to 5, which puts them in danger range of Flanger, while they still have to dodge, guard the Basskirk, which is swinging for 32. Or, if you rip a crit, you put it on Skull, and now your opponent has to guard this or they die, which is going to take a PG or a bunch of cards out of hand, usually 3 or more, or a bunch of triggers. Either one is a good result. And then when your opponent's at 5, of course this becomes extremely deadly. In some cases, when my opponent's at 5, I will ride Skull Dragon on top of Basskirk, because once my opponent's at 5, like I have other sources of revival that I have in the deck, so I don't really need to rely on Basskirk for the revival. And if my opponent's at 5, well, this Skull Dragon on my Vanguard is going to be more pressure against my opponent than a Basskirk is. Except when I'm feigning Protect, because they're going to have a Protect gift anyway, so I don't really bother then. And then, of course, we have Violence Flanger. Violence Flanger is a one-of that may not come into importance in all games, but when it can really help you clinch games against Protect specifically, especially OTT. With Skull Dragon's ability to force your opponent up to 5 damage, and then Flanger being here, Flanger basically lets you Soul Blast your grade 3, discard any number of cards, and your opponent cannot guard its attack with Sentinels or any grades that you discard for its cost. So it can create an unguardable attack, and after Skull Dragon's forced your opponent up to 5, Flanger can come in and just finish the job. And that finishing power, that guaranteed finishing power, is very, very important for this deck to have. For our grade 2 lineup, we just 4 of all of the things that are good. Ruin Shade is on VNR, it swings, you mill 2, it gets plus 4k, so it's hitting 13k, so that makes all kinds of good numbers. It hits solo against Force Vanguards. When you're going first, it hits 2 stages against an AK, a grade 1 Vanguard. And then if you have 10 or more cards in drop, it also gets power plus 4,000. So it's hitting against any Protect or Excel Vanguards for 2 stages solo, and it becomes an easy 3 stages with Cutlass or Norman or Evil Shade, or it even becomes 4 stages with a Dandy behind it, a Dandy guy Romario behind it. So it's hitting really, really good numbers. Nightmist is another source of revival. On place, you counterblast 1 to revive a grade 1 or less, and if you have 10 or more in drop zone, you can instead revive something of any grade. So this will allow you to fill out your field very quickly with basically Basskirk to revive this, and then to revive Nightmist, and then you Nightmist to revive a Skull or a Ruin Shade or a Commodore, one of those things, and then say just call a Cutlass behind Nightmist so that Nightmist can swing at a rear or something, deal with an intercept, force 10k shield out if they want to block it, and then your other things just do normal work. Blueblood, also very good. When you have another copy of it in the drop zone, it gets plus 4k, so it's also hitting that very good 13k number, just like our buddy over here, Ruin Shade. And when it hits, you get to retire it, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card from your hand. So get anything we need in the drop zone, accelerate our drop zone, and convert any field advantage, which we generate tons of, into direct hand advantage. Very strong. And by running this 12 grade 3 lineup, or 12 grade 2, we're able to do that thing that Granblue really loves to do. Where on grade 2 turn, we just slap down a bunch of cards, specifically grade 2s, and rush our opponent, because we don't really care whether they do anything or not, because like we can still intercept with them, and we still have full access to them via our revival abilities. So it gives us a very strong grade 2 turn, and running all of these grade 2s helps make that happen as consistently as possible. Dandy Guy Romario is really fantastic for enabling our entire deck. So when it's rode upon, you counterblast 1, put a card from your hand into its soul, then you mill 3, and grab something from your drop zone. So this not only sets up your drop, but allows you to have more consistency at grabbing anything that you need. Like, say you need a Basskirk. Romario helps a lot with ensuring that you will get that Basskirk in time. Now, with the chances of getting a specific grade 3 is already really high at about 70%. 70% chance, with only a 12% chance that you'll be forced to run into another grade 3. And if you G-assist, which Romario can help force you into by shoving a skull into its soul and milling 3, replacing it with something else, taking that grade 3 out of your soul for an efficient cost that you'd be putting in there anyways, so that you can enable a flanger or just have it in soul to soul blast out and revive later, etc., etc. Tons of different uses for it. Basically, enables a lot of things that way. And then when it's on rear, it gets plus 4k as long as you have 4 or more in drop. So that makes Commodore Blueblood hit for 3 stages. That makes, as I said, Ruin Shade swing for 4 stages. This behind Basskirk makes Basskirk into a huge threat of 4 stages without any revival bonus effects. And then if you revive anything, that's probably going to be 6, 7 stages. Very, very big. Cutlass is one of the best cards, probably the best card if I'm being perfectly honest. So Cutlass is, when it's in the drop zone, you can bind another copy of it to mill 1, revive it, and countercharge 1. So this is a +1 that also unflips your damage so that you can +1 more. Basically, every usage of Cutlass is a +2 to your net advantage over the course of the game, because every counterblast you have access to turns into a +1, and Cutlass itself is of course +1. Now, a lot of the time with Cutlass, we will end up calling over it to get it into drop so that we can re-enable it. Basically, what will happen is like whatever's in front of Cutlass will be intercepted away, or it will be Skull Dragon and it'll die anyways. And then when we have another Cutlass in drop, what we'll do is we'll revive whatever we're reviving to that column on top of Cutlass, then move it up, and then we'll be able to revive another Cutlass from our drop zone. So that it easily enables us to get 2 or 3 Cutlasses off each game. And like typically 2. I very rarely have a game where I don't get 2 off, if I'm being perfectly honest, because you go through a lot of your deck. And you get less overall card advantage that way. Like, you don't get your maximum plus 11 over the course of the game without any heals, because you get 5 from your Counterblast, 3 from Cutlass, and 3 from the extra Counterblast that Cutlass gave you. You're not likely to get all of those, to be honest. Usually the average is more around like 8 or 9, especially when you consider, again, we're going to be calling over Cutlass. Because people aren't going to retire Cutlass for you, so you know. That's the thing. That's the whole thing. Norman the Ghostie, really fantastic card. Basically, it retires itself, mills 2, and you give something plus 10k. So this is great with like Ruin Shade or Blueblood, any of our grade 2s really, because it pushes these two up to 3 stages solo. And like when we're going first on our grade 3 turn, it pushes Nightmist up to 3 stages as well. So it makes them all hit good numbers. Those are very scalable. Like in the early game, we can do things like call Norman just because we want a booster, or make a double grade 1 column, or whatever, so that we can get some more pressure off. And then when we ride to grade 3, we can just get rid of Norman, give something a big buff, and it's not a problem. And in addition to that, it's also very useful with Nightmist to get our drop zone all ready to go. So like we can do a thing where we call Norman, give something 10k, put it to drop, then we call Nightmist off of Basskirk or just from hand, Counterblast 1, revive Norman, do the thing again. We just went plus 5 to our drop zone while also getting plus 20k to our board for that turn. Very strong. And then lastly, we have Evil Shade. Evil Shade is the thing that you're just typically going to be slapped down at the drops in the back row at some point in the game. And then you're just going to have it there to Counterblast 1, bind something from your drop zone, and revive something with the same name at any point that you might need it. When you might need multiple revivals, because thanks to Cutlass, it's very easy to have the Counterblast access to do that. Or when we might not have Soul to keep Basskirk going, or when we need, say, a double skull play, so we can do things like Basskirk to revive 1. If we have all 3 in the drop zone, Basskirk to revive 1, then Evil Shade to revive the other, or if we only have 2 in the drop zone, we Basskirk to revive 1, and then we Evil Shade to revive Nightmist to revive Skull, and that sort of thing happens. Or if we only have 1 soul, and that's a grade 3, we use Evil Shade to revive Nightmist, to revive Flanger, chains like that. It's the fact that Evil Shade is able to sit mostly safe in the back row, especially for the matchups that we really need this sort of thing for. Like, we don't really need this sort of thing for Kagro or Shadows, because they are pretty fragile decks that, like, defensively they aren't going to, like, because a lot of their defense does come from their control aspects. We're not that affected from them. We can play very conservatively, not spend a whole lot of hands, so we are able to minimize their effect on us. So stuff like Evil Shade isn't really important for those matchups, and we don't really need any extra help. But for stuff like OTT, basically other protect decks, any deck that is able to keep itself going for a long period of time, those are the decks that aren't going to be able to hit Evil Shade, and they're also the decks that Evil Shade is extremely helpful against, because it lets us keep our stuff going and keep our full field going without investing hand. And that is the most important aspect of the deck. The fact that with all this card advantage, while it is all focused on the field, we basically never expend hand to fill our field outside of the early game. So we're able to very easily keep a good hand size and deal with whatever our opponent throws at us. I think that's all. Triggers should be obvious. 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, and of course, the best protect marker in the game, Flex Goki. Yeah, that's it. This is very standardized, honestly. I'm excited to see how this list might change when we get the Granblue promo in about 2 weeks revealed. Hopefully that comes to English in good time, whatever it ends up being. But with that said, this is Hunter Surge, signing off.